realized their presence. A ripple of disbelief swept across the council chambers. "This can't be happening," one historian breathed, staring in utter shock at the live data feeds. The ships were too large, their technology too advanced, and yet they were unmistakably human. And then one ship broke formation and began a slow descent toward the center of the galaxy, heading directly for the heart of their military stronghold. It was then that it hit them. The humans had returned, not as a myth, but as conquerors. The legend was real, and their fleet, the one that had been whispered about in hushed tones, was now a very present and very terrifying force. The humans strike back. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council had no answers. Their myths had been rewritten. When the fleet arrived, it wasn't with arrogance. It wasn't a boastful claim to power. Instead, it was with chilling calmness. There was no military posturing, no grand speeches from human commanders, just silence as their massive ships filled the skies. The sheer scale of their presence overshadowed the council, their ships hanging in space like silent sentinels, unmoving. It was when the first shots were fired that the galaxy knew this wasn't a warning. It wasn't a message. The humans had arrived, and they would reshape the future of the galaxy in their own image. A light show of dazzling destruction echoed throughout the system as human weapons unleashed their power. The alien fleet scrambled, trying to respond, but it was clear. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a reckoning. Within minutes, entire fleets were shattered, reduced to stardust. Their weapons systems, though formidable, were no match for the overwhelming might of human technology. Their defense grids failed. Their most advanced ships exploded in a hail of fire and debris. And the humans, they didn't even flinch. "Are we witnessing history, or the beginning of our end?" Someone whispered, but the question was left unanswered as the humans pressed on, their ships moving with precision, their intentions unmistakable. They were rewriting history, and the galaxy could do nothing to stop it. The galaxy shudders. When the smoke cleared, it wasn't victory that the galaxy felt. It was dread. There would be no parade for the humans, no ceremonial speeches. Instead, the myth had been fully realized. A species once thought to be lost to time had returned, stronger, smarter, and deadlier than anyone had ever imagined. The galaxy, so sure of its power and dominance, now trembled before the ancient fleet that had emerged from the void. The whispers began almost immediately, passed in secret corridors and quiet cantinas. The legends were real. The humans had come. The stories weren't myths. The species that had once ruled the galaxy was now back, and no one knew how to stop them. "Do you hear it?" one officer asked, his voice low. "The ships, they're still out there." A darkening silence fell over the galaxy, and as the fleet drifted through the stars, it was clear that the ancient myth was now a living, breathing reality. The galaxy had made one grave mistake. It had forgotten the humans, and now they would pay the price. The myth of humanity. In the vastness of the galaxy, among civilizations far older and more advanced, humanity was nothing more than a whisper, a tale woven into the archives of forgotten races. For eons, humans had been dismissed as a myth, a footnote in the history of the cosmos, with no evidence to suggest they ever truly existed. The first contact stories, passed down through generations of explorers and scholars, were ridiculed in the war councils of the great alien empires. Humans. Mere folklore, they scoffed. The myth was always the same, an insignificant species of primitive beings, long extinct, who had supposedly once roamed a small, insignificant planet. The archives were flooded with records detailing their supposed rise and fall, their wars, their fleeting brilliance, and their eventual disappearance. But no one had ever found a trace of them. No artifacts, no ships, no sign of their existence. just the stories. Elaborate, fantastical tales dismissed as nothing more than the imaginings of ancient cultures. So, when the Council of the Suresh Dominion, the galaxy's most formidable empire, gathered for their annual war summit, the idea of human existence was nothing more than a joke. Their scholars laughed, their warriors mocked. The notion that humanity could pose any threat to the Dominion was laughable, for they, who had mastered interstellar travel, whose fleets filled the stars, could not fathom a species that had once dominated a planet without ever leaving it. Yet as the meeting progressed and their focus shifted to the growing unrest near the Galactor Nebula, a strange signal began to grow louder. At first, it was dismissed as an anomaly, just another faint whisper in the sea of space. But soon, it became something more. Rising suspense, the signal from the unknown. The signal was faint but undeniable. It flickered across the Dominion's deep space scanners, each pulse growing slightly stronger with every passing day. Still, the Dominion's military tacticians were uninterested, dismissing it as another fluke of cosmic radiation or a malfunction of the surveillance grid. After all, they had been monitoring the space around the nebula for centuries, and nothing had ever emerged. The War Council barely paid attention as the signal oscillated between frequencies. It was just noise, they thought, the stuff of legend, but curiosity gnawed at the edge of their confidence. The Dominion's top engineers, who had spent their lives studying the vast expanses of the galaxy, were now called in to examine the signal. "You cannot seriously believe that this is anything more than a myth, surely," said Commander Kesh, a high-ranking officer with an unwavering belief in the superiority of the Dominion. But something about the signal didn't fit the usual pattern of cosmic interference. It was too structured, too deliberate. It seemed to pulse, a rhythm that hinted at intelligence. Something alien, something terrifying. "Maybe it's a distress signal from an ancient ship," suggested analyst Vera, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Perhaps some long-forgotten relic of a bygone age." "Impossible," Kesh sneered. "There's no such thing as humanity." Yet, despite their certainty, the signal refused to fade. It continued to echo through the silence of the void, drawing more and more attention from the Dominion's military experts. Their disbelief began to crumble under the weight of evidence they could not ignore. Turning point reveal, the myth becomes real. It was then that the first visual confirmation arrived. A small fleet of ships, too large to be a random anomaly, too structured to be a natural formation, emerged from the ghost signal. The Dominion sensors picked them up first as blurry blips, no larger than insects to their massive warships. But as the hours ticked by, the image grew clearer. Those blips were no ordinary vessels. They were ships, ships of war. The Dominion's leaders were silent. There was no laughter now, no mockery. Only a deep, unsettling silence as the ships grew larger on their screens. They were real. For the first time, the Council was faced with the undeniable truth. The myth of humanity was not just a myth. A general broke the silence. What is this?" His voice trembled as his eyes locked on the display. An emergency session of the Dominion's War Council was called. Their arrogance had shattered, replaced by a deep, growing unease. The ships were massive, their designs unlike anything the Dominion had ever encountered. They did not belong to any race the Dominion had conquered. There was no known empire that could muster such a fleet, no galactic power that could even dream of rivaling it. And yet there they were, lurking just beyond the nebula, like a shadow growing in the stars. "Could it be them?" asked Vera, her voice barely a whisper. "Could it really be humanity?" The Dominion's leaders stared at the holographic projection of the fleet, now clearly visible in all its terrifying detail. The once-dismissed legends of humanity had materialized before them. Conflict/climax, the fleet moves. The Dominion's War Council scrambled to respond, but their once-vaunted superiority felt hollow. Humanity's fleet, while not as technologically advanced in terms of raw firepower, was built for war in ways the Dominion had not anticipated. They arrived not as invaders, but as an unstoppable force, with a strategy so perfect, so terrifying, that it seemed as if the humans had known exactly how the Dominion would react. The fleet moved with a precision and coordination that was nothing short of mastery. Every ship, every commander acted as one. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. The battle that followed was swift and brutal. Dominion warships, larger and more powerful,